I got rich from speculation. It worked out for me. People in crypto who have made a lot of wealth because of this speculation. And they will come out and say, oh, well, speculation is not a real use case. Speculation's bad. We shouldn't have speculation. You are here because of speculation.
Meltem Demirors, early crypto investor and founder and general partner at Crucible.
She was also Chief Strategic Officer at CoinShares, Europe's largest digital asset investment firm,
which oversees $7 billion in AUM.
Crypto has been such a great place to spend the last 9 years of my life because there's so many disciplines you touch on. There's the philosophical side to it, economics, there's technology, and the rabbit hole goes really deep.
Absolutely.
2015, Bitcoin ran to $1,200 and then cratered to like 120. Joining the Bitcoin when Bitcoin had just gone down 80-90%. And you see so many people coming in. That was really inspiring.
One of the things that caught my attention was the EtherRocks and the Dig Butt.
I think I bought my EtherRock for 9 ETH, which was like $35,000.
The first anything you bought was for $35K and it was a JPEG of a rock.
I'm just a girl.
So you're really early in this Bitcoin wave, and now the goal is to be early in something else that a lot of people don't even think about it. To be honest, first I was like, what the fuck? And second I was like, she's smart. So instead of saying, what the fuck, I should ask, what does she understand that I don't?
Do you want to hear something crazy?
I want. I think everybody wants.
Okay, so
75% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. If you like this show and think it provides value to you in your crypto investing journey, can you please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel? Hit the like button and leave a comment below. It helps this channel more than you can imagine. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests, and the better the conversation. Thank you. This conversation is supported by Jupiter, the most used decentralized trading platform on Solana and the largest DAO in the world. Bitwise Asset Management, the crypto specialist asset manager with more than $10 billion in client assets and more than 30 crypto solutions across ETFs, index funds, alpha strategies, staking, and more. 3. A scalable layer 1 blockchain that's fast, secure, and affordable, built by previous Facebook developers, and that delivers the benefits of Web3 with the ease of Web 2. And Mantle, an Ethereum layer 2 that built 2 products I particularly like. FBTC, which enables you to borrow and lend Bitcoin in DeFi, and METH or METH, one of the largest ETH liquid staking protocols in crypto.
Is it your good angle, right angle?
every angle is good, baby.
No, because often women are like very conscious about what's the right angle.
You know, I wasn't really into, I've always been like a brains person, so I never really worried about how I looked. And then I became like a public persona.
Yeah.
And now I'm dealing with the fact that like my first 6 years in crypto, I like didn't wear makeup. I like did it and I looked like a turtle. It's like, I need to figure out how to delete myself off the internet pre-2021 because pre-2021 I just didn't care about my appearance.
What made you change? Because you might just not care, right? Hey, I'm here for the brains.
I think aesthetic is incredibly important, and aesthetic is everything. Like if you believe in God, which I don't know if I believe in God, but if you believe in like holiness and divinity, then you should be aesthetic maxing. It's the highest ROI activity.
That's true. Like if you're honest to yourself, that's true, right? The first thing you see is like the first.
It's the judgments.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. People.
Pretty privilege is real.
Yeah.
I really like it. And I want people to assume like I'm dumb because people look at me and they're like, look at this dumb hoe. Like I'm gonna.
Reminds me of one of the tweets I saw the other day, where you said, "I let men explain me the yen."
Yeah, it's a little
carry trade. Right?
It's a little treat for them. The boys need love too. I'm like, yes, please accept. I was once at a dinner, I was sitting next to someone, I won't name him, and he didn't know I worked in crypto, right? It was just like a social dinner in London that Stunny from Ave had organized, right? It's like we're at a social club, it's fun, it's sexy, whatever. And I'm sitting next to this guy. He has no idea I work in crypto. And I don't bring it up. I never bring it up because it's like not interesting. And nobody wants to sit next to that person at dinner who just talks about Bitcoin the whole time. That's what this guy did. And he was like, have you ever heard of Bitcoin? And I was like, no, I haven't. I'm like, I've read about it, but I don't. And I thought he would get the joke, but he didn't. And so for 2 hours, this guy is explaining Bitcoin to me.
How well?
not terribly well. But it's really like, it's sweet, and he was really enjoying it. So I'm like, who am I to
stop this?
so like he's
This
having
man
it.
mansplaining me on Bitcoin.
No, but it was like, he was really, it was cute, right? And I had, at no point did I feel like it was a good moment to sort of stop him. So I just let him keep going. It's not a malicious thing. Anyway, so for dessert, everyone switches places. And he sat next to someone who I guess was like telling him about me, was like, oh, did you have a good conversation with Meltem? You know, she's and she's He comes up to me after the dessert course and he goes, I just want you to know you're an asshole. And he's like, why did you let me make a fool of myself? I'm like, you were having fun. Like,
Yeah. I mean, if he's really in Bitcoin, he should kind of know you, probably,
no,
right?
No, it's not even that. It was just, I thought it was really cute. So sometimes I like to ask people things that I know the answer to just because it makes them feel good, you know?
So that good luck for me. I'm the one asking the questions today, so I'm not going to.
Yeah, but I might ask you to explain something to you. I'd be like, oh, come in. Would you please, like, I don't know what that is.
I mean, I know your trick. I know your trick since I read that tweet, actually, and I loved a lot. And there was a lot of engagement, so people understand the witty side.
I'm funny, I think. I'm just a funny, strange person.
You have funny and strange.
Strange, yeah,
Why?
absolutely. I think that I like a very specific set of things. Like, you asked me what my hobbies are, like crypto, the history of capital markets, science fiction, vintage furniture. That's it. Bushcrafting, like survival camping. That's it. That's it. That's as far as it goes.
So you can do survival camping, but you can also look very good and wear super nice shoes during a podcast. Show us the shoes. Yeah, show us the shoes.
It's fun.
It's fun, actually.
It makes me feel good. So anyways, just like that guy explaining Bitcoin, that felt good for him. This feels good for me. So
for people like that guy who don't know who you are.
I don't like this phrasing though. Like, I'm nobody. I'm just a random person, right? Why should anyone know anything?
So you're a random person?
Yeah, I think so. We all are, right? Like, when you're in a social setting, I think when people come in and they're like, I'm so-and-so, I think that's...
It's so cringe.
It's insufferable, yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, or even like, I go to a lot of events. So I used to go to a lot more events now. I don't go to so many events, but I will again now that I have my new firm, right? I always find it so strange because people will come up to you at events, and I'm sure people who watch your show will come up to you and they're like,
I've heard more, but only nerds.
Yeah, they're like, but I find it so interesting socially because they're like, oh my God, hey, Kevin.
It's
and
like
I'm
to
just
each
like,
other.
And I'm like, hi, my name is Meltem. What's your name? Like, It's so nice to meet you. Like, what is this fucking weird social? And like, just be normal. It's strange.
So for someone who doesn't know you and who asks you, who are you?
Yeah.
What do you answer?
I'm just a girl.
You don't know any word.
I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl.
You're a girl, but you have a huge fire in the belly, right?
Yes.
Where does it come from?
I think people are motivated by different things, right? I think the framework that most people use, like, people care about money, people care about fame, people care about power, right? Those are like typically the three kind of drivers. I think for me, ever since I was a kid, it's been knowledge. I just like knowing things, not for any other purpose that's fun for me. And that's why I think crypto has been such a great place to spend the last 9 years of my life, because there's so many disciplines you touch on. There's a philosophical side to it. There's obviously economics, there's technology, there's all of these different disciplines, and the rabbit hole goes really deep. So for me, I think the motivation has always been, I like to know things. But more than that, I think investing is fun because it's the exercise of trying to translate knowledge into alpha, and there's a scorecard.
100%.
And I like the scorecard. I'm competitive.
100%.
Mostly with myself, but also with the market. And I'm like, can I catch things before they catch fire?
100%. I remember being at school and doing pretty well there, but I was always thinking it's so rational, right? The grading system, that I can never show that I'm the best because it's kind of like too rational, right? Or sometimes some classes actually are very irrational. It's more like the teacher likes you or not, right? And then I discovered with investing actually and entrepreneurship, building businesses, I was like, this is actually the way for me to express whether my opinion about the world and whether I'm right or wrong. And I might be completely wrong, but at least I have a way to kind of differentiate myself from the masses, right? So I felt like something very similar.
What's fun about crypto is it's not just about being intellectually right. I talk to a lot of founders and they spend a lot of time talking to me about the specifics of the technical specifications or the technical differentiation of their product or their protocol. And that's really not the most important thing. I think we are currently in an era of crypto, and we've always sort of been in this sort of meta, but I think we're now just starting to understand it. It's about, and this is why I joke, like I'm an aspiring cult leader and I want to invest in founders who are aspiring cult leaders, because it's really about not just your ability to build something that is technically innovative and brings new features to market, but it's also about your ability to create narratives and to capture attention and to compete for capital, right? To compete for TVL, to compete for transaction volume. This is really important. And I think that's something that there are a lot of investors I really respect. I think they are intellectually like leagues and leagues above and beyond me, but that's not the game we're playing. That's a portion of it, but it's not all it is. So I think the ability to understand these social dynamics and how trends form, and this is why I love like cults, right? And Bitcoin is a religion more so than anything else, a religion and a social movement.
Yeah. I was talking with Kiao Wang the other day from Alliance, and we were talking about what Charlie Munger brought to the Warren Buffett approach. Warren Buffett was very fundamental investing, and then Charlie Munger was much more kind of like almost growth investing. Yeah. He was saying, and the whole thesis was everybody saying in crypto, alt season is coming, right? But then Kiao was saying, actually, it's very different now, because the fundamental catalysts for alt season basically are that you need to have a limited amount of tokens and you need to have a lot of liquidity. Right now we have none of both, right?
Yeah.
For the moment, and we have too many tokens.
We have low liquidity, right? Because the other thing that's fundamentally shifted is market microstructure with the introduction of the ETFs. A lot of the new inflows coming in are going into ETFs, and that capital is not going elsewhere. Whereas in prior cycles, I think you had more of this sort of circularity of capital, where capital would flow into Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin would appreciate in value. People would go further out on the risk curve, right? Yeah. Now that's not, it's still going to happen, I think, but not to the same degree. And I think one of the sort of dichotomies that we don't talk about enough is with the financialization of crypto, and everyone talks about, oh, the institutions are coming. Like, they're not coming to buy your shitcoins, my friend. My brother in Christ, they are not coming to buy your shitcoins. And so I just think that many people are sort of detached from that very fundamental reality.
Absolutely.
So it's going to be much more of a barbell, right? I think there will be an extreme sort of, it'll be binary outcomes. It's either a 0 or it's a 1, right? And if it's a 0, that means that your project will go public, go live, launch mainnet, issue a token, and it will trade below your last round FDV, which in my view is kind of a 0, or you'll catch fire, and there will be very few who sort of reach that escape velocity. And so now my focus is figuring out what are those things going to be.
Dear When Shift Happens family, the following message is probably the single most important thing you should take away from today's podcast. If you're serious about your crypto investing journey, please take some time to learn how to self-custody your assets to make sure that nobody can take your coins away, ever. If you don't learn how to be your own bank, it is very likely that one day you will lose all your hard-earned crypto. The safest way to hold your crypto is in a cold storage that we also call hardware wallets. Hardware wallets are not complicated and they give you peace of mind. I personally use a hardware wallet called Trezor. It is open source, very easy to use, and the first hardware wallet created ever. As we like to say it in crypto, not your keys, not your coin. You can order your Trezor wallet with a 10% discount by following the link in the description down below and by using the promo code WSH10. And now back to the episode.
And you're saying that this is not fully, but a huge part of the ones who are going to one is attention, right?
That's a lot of it. And price drives price. Everyone thinks narrative drives price, but it's price drives price, which I think has, and it's this way in all markets, right? And I think as we look at public equities, right, volatility in public equities is way up since the pandemic. And why is that? I think much of the investing community has shifted from this sort of closed subscription-based or research-driven model where you relied on, stock pickers and analysts at large financial institutions, hedge funds, specialist firms for intelligence and insights. Now you go on X, and there's all of this free information from world-class analysts who are deep experts in a lot of different domains, right? There's FX Twitter, there's commodities Twitter, there's crypto Twitter, there's equities Twitter, there's now even, all of these Twitter gurus who invest in small businesses like car washes and whatever you're looking for. There's so much expertise and so much information out there. And I think it has made a lot of the rest of finance much more trend-driven, much more sort of narrative and meta-driven, and resulted in a lot more inherent volatility. And crypto supercharged that, right? Big hot ball of money. You have 24/7, 365 instant liquidity.
Is this a good or bad thing?
There is no good or bad. It just is. There is no, I am not in the business of judging good or bad. I'm in the business of deploying capital. So it's not about good or bad. It's about this is. And as a result of this is how allocators, investors, whether you're a retail investor, a semi-professional investor, or a professional investor, this is how you adapt to what
100%.
is, right? I think we need to disabuse ourselves of this idea of good or bad. There is no good or bad. The market decides what's good or bad.
Yeah,
with price.
The good or bad is more like the way kind of our parents would think about things, right? If you think about, for example, robots, right? Elon Musk said recently there will be a humanoid robot for every person on Earth, plus robots working in the industry, which means there will be a market for 20 billion humanoid robots. My mother probably would say, this looks weird. This is not a good thing, right? Or just social media, right?
Sure.
This is bad, like people are too addicted. There is proof that people feel bad about it, more suicide, etc., right? But at the end of the day, what can you do about it? But take it as it is, right? And adapt. And again,
but that's the arc of human progress.
it is, yeah.
You
go through.
It just is. We face the same thing in Bitcoin, right? When I started working in Bitcoin, I was convinced it was a question of when, right? Not if, but when. It's like Bitcoin is absolutely going to be a force that radically reshapes capital markets, financial system, global economies. It was just for me a question of when. It's like, okay, I'm perfectly happy to be in the struggle for as long as it takes because I know it will happen. I felt very convinced of that. I think a lot of people were in the if stage, right? They did not feel convinced. Same thing with what I'm doing now. I know it's going to happen. It's no longer a question of if. I've seen enough to know this is going to happen. It's just a question of when. And can I be in the game long enough so that when it happens, I win, right? And winning is different to different people, of course, right? It goes back to what drives you. Some people, it's very much about money. Some people just really want to be right. You see this all the time. I see people engaging on Twitter and they're so combative and I'm like, yeah, relax a little bit.
Actually, I read there is actually some scientific studies that say that there is the hit that you get from being right is actually much higher than the hit that you get from making money.
Yeah.
Right? Just being right. Like, hey, I was right. And
but what's the prize? What's the prize?
Probably pride. I don't know, maybe maybe insecurity where you're just like, I don't know.
I
But
think,
like-
I just think it's fun. Like for me, that's how I'm wired. For me, it's fun. I'm just like, yeah, like, fuck yeah. Like that's all right.
Before we talk about your thesis, right, for the future,
It's not a thesis, it's a direction.
what's the difference between a thesis and direction?
I think thesis is very like a definitive sort of I don't know, I shy away from the word thesis. I just think it's overused, or when people say like principles first or first principles, thesis driven, it's become so overused that it's meaningless. I have a directional heading, but there's a lot of uncertainty around that directional heading. So I think remaining intellectually flexible is important. I think thesis is a bit rigid for how early things still are and how unformed things still are. So I'm no first principles, no thesis. We're staying away from those words.
So before we talk about this direction, let's understand how you got fascinated by the world of Bitcoin and blockchain. What's your crypto aha moment? When did you understand like this is, because you said before, this was clear to me, right? Early on.
Yeah, I think the aha moment for me was when I sent a Bitcoin transaction. I was like, how?
Why did
I
you do that?
almost felt like I was doing something naughty, you know? You're like, how? This is crazy.
But why did you send the Bitcoin transaction initially? Like, how would you even have the idea?
So it was late 2012. I was working in China at the time. I was working on an acquisition of a mining equipment manufacturer. Very sexy stuff I used to do. And I was talking to my brother, and I wanted to, I had to send money for something, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And he's like, oh, well, Bitcoin. And I was like, what's a Bitcoin? He's like, oh boy. And then I started reading about Bitcoin, and then I figured out how to get some Bitcoin, and then I sent some Bitcoin, and I just thought it was one of the wildest things I'd ever experienced. But it didn't really, I'll be very honest, it didn't really click for me immediately. I then did other things, went to graduate school, and then Bitcoin started growing and growing. So it's 2013, Coinbase comes out, 2014, Circle, right? I was in grad school in Boston, so obviously a lot of people talked about Circle. And then I had the good fortune of being at MIT, and there were a lot of people at MIT who were really focused on Bitcoin at the time. So Dan Elitzer, who now runs Nascent, Jeremy Rubin, who has been, a Bitcoin dev and I think a really sort of prominent figure in the Bitcoin ecosystem. There was Gavin Andreessen, who was the maintainer of the Bitcoin core repo, who took that over from Satoshi. He was also based in Boston. Circle is based in Boston. Fidelity is headquartered in Boston. Abby Johnson, who owns Fidelity, runs Fidelity, she got into Bitcoin very early, started mining Bitcoin early on. So it was being exposed to the idea, being at a point in my life where I wanted to try new things, but also being exposed to a really interesting group of people who are all talking about thinking about Bitcoin. Yeah. And then I took a jump, and that's
What made you take the jump, take the leap?
I'll be really honest, I was very bored. I was very bored. I was like, the thought of going and spending the rest of my life working in corporate finance was just very depressing.
I think a lot of people feel like that still today, probably.
Yeah.
Most likely, right?
I was like, if I'm going to go back to doing PowerPoints and Excel models for the rest of my life, what's the point? And that's not a criticism. No, I just think,
understand.
Grow up and you get older, you just learn things about yourself. And I was like, okay, as I learn more about myself and what I like, I am learning that maybe some of these skills I've acquired and these things I'm doing are not really aligned with what makes me feel alive, right? But I didn't know that. I didn't even know about startups till I was in my mid-20s. Like, I worked in the oil industry. I was hanging out in pipe yards in, the Yukon in January. It's negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Like, you have to plug your car in when you go to bed at night. That's the environment I was hanging out in. It was a bit different, I would say, than what was going on in Silicon Valley and in other entrepreneurial ecosystems.
What's your first experience in crypto then, when you said I jumped?
I joined DCG. Yeah.
2015, the beginning, right?
Yeah. I was actually hired by Second Market, which was Barry's prior firm. Yeah, but I met Ryan Selkis first through Dan Ellitzer, actually. Ryan Selkis was supposed to be in our grad school class, but he decided to stay in Bitcoin and work on Bitcoin, and he built the blog 2-Bit Idiot, TBI. The Bitcoin lore goes very deep. And you have to remember, this is like the days of Gox and the Silk Road, right? So when I decided, and then through Ryan, I met Barry, they were starting DCG. It's like, okay, I think I have some really specific skills I can bring to the table here, having worked in very corporate environments, right? These are two much more entrepreneurial, sort of like startup guys. And then I was like, okay, let's do this. And we did it. We did it.
What's something you learned at DCG that you could never have learned anywhere else?
So many things. I think I built, first and foremost, there was something really special about Bitcoin, like 2015 era Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has sort of gone through this crazy boom, right? 2011, 2012, it was still very early. Some of the first products were things like Satoshi Dice, which is Eric Voorhees's company. In 2011, I think he started it. You know, you had Gox. There were just a small number of companies. Coinbase really was the first big venture-backed company. That was YC, spring, summer 2013. Yeah. There weren't a lot of Bitcoin companies around. And then Gox happened. The Silk Road happened, right? Bitcoin ran to $1,200 and then cratered to like $120. There was this really big existential sort of question about the future of Bitcoin. And so joining the Bitcoin industry, which at the time was very small, joining the Bitcoin ecosystem, community, industry, whatever you want to call it, at a point in time when two really catastrophic things had just happened. And when Bitcoin had just gone, you know, prices down 80, 90%, sentiment's really bad. And you see so many people coming in and building companies in this space and more convinced than ever that they're right about Bitcoin. That was really inspiring. It was also really hard. Lived through the block size wars as well, and that was a really interesting experience. I learned about the power of communities from that, because that's when you had these different factions in Bitcoin really competing for control, trying to dictate sort of what is the future of Bitcoin. And, you know, UASF, user activated soft fork, was sort of the force that won out. I learned a lot. I gained a lot of respect for founders, particularly founders in Bitcoin, just the challenges they went through. There's, you know, the BSA, Operation Choke Point, not being able to get banking, regulatory pressure, so many different attacks from different vectors. The surface area of risk working in Bitcoin was insane, right? There's constant cybersecurity risk. There's constant personal security risk. There's all of these insane risks that are really difficult to mitigate. And then on top of that, there's just the psychological challenge of dealing with an underlying asset that's extremely volatile.
Just on the top of that.
Yeah.
As a cherry on the cake.
But I do think there is like this really... Today, when I see people from the early days of DCG, and I'm really proud of what we did, we built a really amazing community of founders and brought them together in different ways with a lot of in-person events, but also just introducing people to one another, trying to build synergies in the portfolio we were building. I think it's nice running into people now. They've been really successful. Their companies have been successful. They were right. They were right about Bitcoin. And it's just nice running into them and being able to go back to that time and just like, wow, we did it. And different people did different things. But what I love about Bitcoin and what I think still makes Bitcoin so special is such a big component of it is driven by volunteers, right? And just people on the internet. Like we memed a global reserve currency into existence over the span of a decade on the internet. That's
which is pretty crazy. Yeah.
that's just pretty wild. It was pretty profound, and obviously had the support of investors and others who really supported Bitcoin on its journey to becoming what it is today. But what I like about a crypto, which is why I sort of detest it when people are like, oh, I've been in crypto since 2013, or I've been in crypto since this state. Nobody cares, right? And it's because there's so many different ways for people to contribute to the growth of Bitcoin as protocol, Bitcoin as an asset class, Bitcoin as a social movement / religion. And there's a lot of different types of people who have built businesses of all kinds, whether those are more services-oriented businesses, media or content businesses, or, exchanges, financial services businesses, whatever it is. There's so many people who've built really great businesses that are also complementary to the growth of Bitcoin. So that's really, I think, really, really cool to see.
So you're really early in this Bitcoin wave, right? And now the goal is to be early in something else that a lot of people don't even think about it. To be honest, I spent quite some time researching and I hurt my brain
What did
on your direction, right? Because I was like, otherwise I'm going to arrive there, I'm going to understand nothing of what she's talking about. I'm going to look dumb.
But hold on, it's really
it's just every time when you look at something the first time, it's a new concept, right? So I was like, oh, now I understand it better. So I'm able to ask questions that make sense, right?
Yeah.
But
I think it's actually quite intuitive, and it goes back to Bitcoin. If you think about what Bitcoin is, right? Money is a way to transport value across space and time, right? And I think one of the things that this AI boom is bringing about is a renewed conversation about what it is we're actually trying to do with technology. And I think all technology and money as a technology is just an abstraction of thermoeconomics. When I say thermoeconomics, this is like a fancy way of talking about thermodynamics, which is a fancy way of saying there are only two things that are sort of foundational to life on planet Earth, and I presume elsewhere in the universe, and that's energy and matter, right? So Bitcoin did something really unique in that it created thermoeconomic money, right? So created money that was anchored to the laws of thermodynamics, in the sense that in order to operate the Bitcoin protocol, you need energy and you need matter, atoms, in the form of a chip, right? A specialized semiconductor, the ASIC. And so Bitcoin is interesting and cool, I think, because it anchors back to these core laws of the reality that we live in, which is thermodynamics, right? Now I think there's sort of this renewed focus with the AI boom. If we look at what's driving value in markets right now, it's compute. And compute, again, it's about access to energy and access to semiconductors, right? Those are really sort of your core levers. And around that, there are a lot of other levers. When I think about these levers that you can sort of work around, build businesses around, there's technical innovation, right? There are clearly some limitations to technical innovation, but new sources of energy, new sources of generation, new models for distribution and transmission on the semiconductor side, right? New models for semiconductors, whether it's photonics, which is using lasers instead of doing a traditional transistor-based chip. There's now even companies like Extropic, right, that are doing some derivative of biocomputing. But there are these technological innovations on the energy and atom side. And there are also technological innovations in sort of this OSI model, or this networking architecture, which is like the hardware layer, the networking layer, transport layer, and then the application layer, right? So, and crypto has been a lot of innovation. It's sort of the transport layer and the application layer. And now we're starting to see people going further into the stack. We're starting to see new generation of like FPGAs that are specialized for a specific type of crypto computing, i.e. zero knowledge proofs. So first lever is technical innovation. Second lever is operating leverage, right? And this is where, how do you optimize the way you operate assets, infrastructure? That could be, companies in the managed services space. There are a lot of companies like the Alchemies of the world, the Infuras, Block Daemons, et cetera, that are in this sort of managed services operating leverage space. It's tooling that makes it easier for people to run nodes, operators, validators, whatever it may be. And then there's the third lever, which is, I think, the most interesting and probably the most explored design space in crypto, which is financial engineering. So those are kind of the three levers that you have. Like if you sort of reduce everything down, right, and you take out all of the fancy words like thesis and principles first or first principles, I don't even know how to say it, honestly. There's those three levers: technical innovation, operating leverage, and financial engineering. And it was the same in the oil field, right? Like this is where my experience in living through those days of commodities and fundamental technological shifts in the oil industry through the introduction of fracking, which was a technology innovation. It resulted in fundamental changes in operating models for oil and gas companies. And then the facilitation of a futures market, a derivatives market for commodities, particularly oil, that took off in the 2000s with electronic trading, allowed commodities to become a more defined asset class with broader participation, and then introduce these new financial instruments. And it just resulted in this amazing exponential explosion in the volume of activity, financial activity happening in the oil trading space in particular. But that also sort of filtered back and made new technical innovation possible, and then allowed for different kinds of operating leverage. So these three levers kind of all work together. I'm trying to be very simplistic here. I think for me, frameworks are really helpful. And there's a lot you can learn from history, right? Sort of like informative. It won't be exactly the same, but I think there's more commonality than not.
So I basically broke down the whole thing into kind of frameworks, right? To make people, so people can understand and think better, right? The first one is infrastructure, right? Which is a big focus for you.
Mm-hmm.
What is infrastructure?
That's question number one. We throw around the word infrastructure a lot. It means different things to different people. I think this is also one of the funny sort of challenges in crypto. Like there are no canonical definitions. And when I say canonical, it's sort of like widely accepted truths, like global truths versus localized truths, right? So I think one of the challenges is I'll say infrastructure and you'll say infrastructure, and we're speaking about two very different things. Or I'll say deepen, you'll say deepen, and we're thinking of two very different things. So I think this is one of the challenges of working in an industry where there is no sort of formal body that sort of decides, like, here's the canonical definition. The market decides the canonical definition, which I think is also cool, right? Like whatever becomes the most financially successful, that is going to be the definition.
So you operate in a framework where there is no concrete definition for infrastructure, but you find it...
No, sorry, I'm just saying infrastructure is a confusing term. Sorry.
Okay, but you have a...
My definition of infrastructure, it breaks down into two categories. There's physical infrastructure and digital infrastructure, right? And infrastructure is basically the scaffolding that people build things on. So it's protocols, it's frameworks that people use to build. It's about, to me, infrastructure is about standardization, right? So it's standardization in terms of that technical innovation, is standardization in terms of the models people are using to optimize how they operate these different assets, whether it's digital or physical infrastructure. And then it's also standardization of the financial primitives that we're going to use for this financial engineering, right? So a lot of these DeFi building blocks are infrastructure for capital markets. Does that make sense?
It does. The only thing I would say is for, I think, many people who are not a bit strange, as you said, right, that you are, it's not very sexy, right, to think about that. But for you, it is.
It's extremely, how is it not sexy?
Why is it sexy for you to talk about that and to focus on that for the next 10 to 20 years?
Because it's foundational to everything else. Everything else that you interact with, like this, right? This beautiful pudgy penguin. So this one's quite cool. It has a katana. Sick. This pudgy penguin, right? How does this pudgy penguin exist?
Absolutely.
ERC 721, right? Which is the NFT standard, token standard. Like that's foundational in making this possible, right? Then there's financial market infrastructure. You have the OpenSea contract, right, which allows you to trade these things. Then you have lending protocols that allow you to use these as collateral. So infrastructure, I think, is very sexy and is required to make things like this possible.
Which is interesting and comes back to what you said before, because when you showed the project penguin, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about all the digital infrastructure. And the first idea was the physical one that enabled you to build this actual toy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how this was produced, right? That's not my expertise. I know where my limits, I know where my competence begins.
We just know it's cute. And we love the penguins.
I mean, this is kind of badass. I want a katana. I want to walk around with a katana on my back. I think that would be a good look for me. Maybe hard to get through TSA with a katana, no?
Probably not easy. But you found the parking lot to come here, so you can find solutions to anything.
I don't want to talk about it. Oi. Yeah. So I think that's maybe my articulation of infrastructure. It's like, what are all of the underlying components that make it possible for this to exist? And then as there's sort of this recursive relationship, and I think Fred Wilson wrote a really great blog post on this, and other people have written about it, but I think Fred Wilson's blog post is sort of referred to as like, I don't know, the holy grail here, but there's this ongoing conversation that happens in crypto, like why are there not more consumer applications, right? Where are the applications? It's like, well, first the infrastructure has to get built. And so when new infrastructure gets built, it unlocks new applications, right? Without ERC 721, we would have not had this. So new infrastructure innovations happen, and then new applications can get built. And there's sort of this recurring cycle. Infrastructure gets overcapitalized, then people build new applications, those applications get overcapitalized. And so that's sort of the cycle. Now, the way I translate this to what I'm excited about is this is not just happening in the digital realm. There is currently a massive shift underway in the deep tech and physical infrastructure space. For a very long time, if you were doing anything in the hardware or physical infrastructure space, nobody wanted to invest. Unless you were spun out of a corporate or you had some sort of unique access to capital at low cost, is very, very difficult to capitalize a hardware startup. And I will go out on a limb and say, over the last decade, Bitcoin has done more for hardware investing than any other tech sector. Because Bitcoin catalyzed a $100 billion dedicated semiconductor and data center boom.
I think you also said that Ethereum is one of the reasons why NVIDIA was so successful in 2017.
Yeah,
right?
In 2017, NVIDIA sort of soared past Intel and others because of this massive demand for GPUs driven by Ethereum proof of work mining. Same thing in 2020, 2021 with Seagate, solid state drives, SSDs. They were impossible to find, price skyrocketed, blockbuster year for revenues for Seagate primarily, who produces SSDs, solid state drives, for people farming Chia Filecoin and other proof of space and time protocols. So what's interesting is people think of crypto as purely digital tech, but crypto has had a massive impact on the world of atoms, on the world of semiconductors and data centers, right? And we're seeing this now. Bitcoin data centers are really good at one thing because of the unique economics of Bitcoin as a digital commodity. You can never make more Bitcoin per block, right? There is a fixed block reward. What does that mean? You have to get really good at optimizing your operating cost, which means lowest cost of electricity possible, efficient operations, and that could mean like immersion cooling. It could mean a multitude of things. But because Bitcoin data centers have gotten so good at minimizing OpEx, operating expenditures, and finding really low cost power, those Bitcoin data centers now, in a lot of instances, are really optimal for GPU deployments for AI. So I really think there's this interesting relationship where we think of crypto as happening like purely online, but crypto has had a massive impact on our physical world, on physical infrastructure. And now there is a new wave of investing that's happening in Silicon Valley and beyond, where I think investors are recognizing that it's time for a new era of hardware and physical infrastructure that is going to be needed to unleash a new category of software companies, right? Over the last 15 years, really the dominant focus has been on investing in software and bits and bytes. But I think we're now starting to see that we need new hardware, new chips, new energy generation, new models for robotics, like all of these interesting categories that historically have been really unattractive to investors are now becoming really compelling and really attractive because I think crypto and these early beginnings of AI are showing tremendous upside lift, right? Tremendous multiple expansion.
I have 2 points based on what you just said. The first one is what you just said, right? In the last 15 years, we invested in bits and bytes. 2010,
Yeah.
most of the biggest market cap companies were commodities, right?
Yeah, oil and gas companies.
Oil and gas.
Yep.
And now it's technology, right? So
Well,
it feels like
who's the number one company? NVIDIA.
NVIDIA, yeah.
It wasn't even on the chart
Yeah.
a year ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So getting back to...
It's crazy. That's one of my favorite charts, and this is why I'm such a weirdo. This is why I say it's strange. It's like, normal people don't think that's exciting. I think it's so exciting and so fascinating. Something wrong with us. You know? I've accepted it.
So you think that in 2038 or 2040, right, in another 15 years, we're getting back to...
Bits and bytes, sure. One of the big questions is whether or not those cycles will compress and go faster and faster. I don't know. I actually think there is, and this is where I think history becomes really interesting. I have tremendous respect for people like Balaji Srinivasan, who just have such a amazing grasp of human history. His knowledge on this is just... Mine is not so profound. I would not say it's my strong suit, but I do think there is a rate, like a limiting factor as to how fast humans can integrate technological change. So one of the frameworks that people use is the S-curve, right, of adoption, where you kind of have like this slow build, slow build, slow build. And then there's a moment where things just sort of have this exponential uplift, and that sort of parabolic part of the S-curve happens. One of the fun things I like to think about is, has that moment happened for crypto yet? I don't think it has. And I think what will actually unlock that parabolic moment for crypto is the AI economy, AI agents, the agentic economy.
Can you explain why?
Because I think humans struggle to interact with public-private key cryptography. Like, interacting with crypto is quite hard. Why do so many people go through the UX hurdles and the friction of interacting with crypto? It's because there's a bunch of early adopters, kind of like weirdos out there who think it's fun and cool, interesting, whatever. There's also a lot of people who are opportunistic and are like, oh, I can make money. So they go through all of this friction because there's this opportunity. I think AI agents, right, they will have no problem interacting with public-private key cryptography and things in the realm of crypto because it will be very easy for them, right? They operate off of code.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an interesting thing. I like to have these like weird conversations with founders. We don't actually talk about the companies really all that much. Sometimes we end up spending a lot of time just talking about what does the world need to look like for what you're building to be incredibly successful, which I think is an interesting way for me to understand how other people view the world, which influences my thinking as well, right? It's always really constructive. And I think I was having this conversation with a founder a couple of weeks ago. We were sort of debating about it, and has crypto even had that exponential growth moment yet? Have we even reached like a reasonable point of adoption? Because today the primary interface that people use to interact with crypto is a centralized exchange.
Exchanges, yeah, exactly. That's it.
So I don't think we've had that moment yet.
Totally.
Which is kind of wild to think about.
No, completely agree. And even when people kind of throw these numbers of we have that many users, if you're very critical, which you should be, there's so many people with so many addresses, right? Like even the number of users, the hundreds of millions of, or you can say, okay, maybe they hold some coins, but what for? Probably kind of gambling, right? Or making money, right? Which
is a great use case.
Which exactly leads us to something I really want to talk about today, speculation, right? Which is very interesting because before you said crypto is this kind of like online thing, but that actually had a massive impact on this kind of new direction and offline thesis, right? And the hardware, right? Yeah. But crypto itself, so Bitcoin and ETH fueled hardware, right? Yes. But crypto itself is fueled by speculation, which a lot of people, when they come into crypto or they look at this thing kind of from far away, they think it's, scammy or weird or doesn't make sense, etc., right? You have a very different take on that. You say speculation is the fuel that makes the future possible.
Absolutely.
Why is greed
so important in any nascent market to help it take it to the next level?
I think a useful framework, again here, is Carlotta Perez wrote a great book called Technological Revolutions and Financial Bubbles that is about this pattern that emerges. Anytime there's new technology, it tends to be overcapitalized because it happened with, I think the analogy she uses in her book is railroads, right? Railroads emerged. There was this crazy boom to invest in railroads through stock offerings. And so 90% plus of these stock offerings went to zero very quickly. There were a lot of scams, a lot of Ponzi's. But then there was this fundamental shift because railroads became a dominant mode of transportation. They unlocked all sorts of new commerce. All of a sudden, all of these new things were possible, created new industries, et cetera, led to this massive industrialization. So it took just a long period of time. And there was a very heated sort of financial speculation bubble that happened around that innovation. We saw it again with the internet. Everyone loves talking about the dot-com boom as sort of the prime example here, like pets.com and a lot of the internet bubble. Same thing happened, I think, with enterprise SaaS. We look at some of the valuations that people are investing in enterprise SaaS and you're like, wow, that's interesting. And same thing happened with crypto. And crypto's gone through a few waves of intense and fervent speculation. We saw it with ICOs. We saw it with DeFi. We're seeing it now, I think, with L2s and all of this protocol innovation. There's so many protocols that are being capitalized at really lofty valuations, ambitious valuations, I should say. And they have to grow into those. And then there are going to be just a small handful of winners that make it through that speculative bubble, and those are going to win really big. And that's sort of just a recurring pattern. What I don't like sometimes, and I'm not going to name names before you ask me, one of the things that aggravates me is you will have people in crypto who have made a lot of wealth and who have gained power and influence because of this speculation, right? Because they've been on the right side of the trade and had a right call. And they will come out and say, oh, well, speculation is not a real use case. Speculation's bad. We shouldn't have speculation. And I'm like, you are here because of speculation.
Yeah, certainly.
I don't understand I don't know if people feel moral guilt or they feel that somehow reduces the legitimacy of crypto or their legitimacy as an investor. But that is just a foundational part of any industry. And so I don't understand the moral grandstanding. And I'm like, dude, just embrace, it's not good, it's not bad, it's what it is.
It is.
And the more intellectually dishonest you are about it, the scammier crypto looks. Just be intellectually honest about it. It's not a bad thing. It is how humans work. It's how we make bets on the future, right? It's just part of human nature, but people get so, I don't know, they get very weird about it. And people are like, oh, well, the speculation's over and now we're doing real use cases. And the real use case is something like helium, which I love helium, right? I think they have done a really great job showcasing the potential of degen. But helium's been around for 7 years as a token. Prior to that, it was this Series C company, and there's zero shade here. But again, helium has been through 7 years of intense sort of ups and downs, and a lot of the reason why it's survived for so long and had enough capital to figure out the model and get to a point where they're able to actually create real production value is because of this speculation. And that's not a criticism, right? Same thing for a lot of other protocols. But I think it's funny when people say that. I'm like, the reason a lot of these projects have been around so long and have had the runway they need to figure out the model and build the supply side, the demand side, and build things that work is because of the speculative fervor. And again, not a criticism, zero shade here, but I just find it so strange, honestly. So I embrace speculation. If anyone wants to pitch me about speculation, I'm very happy to listen. And I think, again, the market decides what is right. Mr. Market decides. So you could have the technically most brilliant non-speculative use case, but if the market values it at zero, what do you have?
And the market decided that we needed frog coins and dog coins.
Because frog coins and dog coins don't have VCs. And maybe people are a little bit tired of the moralizing where VCs are like, yes, I got rich from speculation. It worked out for me, but now nobody else can have speculation. I think people were just tired of some of the dynamics of the low float, high FDV paradigm.
And on the top of that, they're fun. They're fun.
They're fun.
Yeah.
I own some dog coins.
I mean, talking about that, I have to talk about that now, right? It was last cycle, but like that's how, I mean, I was following what you were doing, but one of the things that caught my attention was the EtherRocks
Oh, yeah.
and the Dick Butts, right?
Yes.
I was just
I
thinking.
love pudgies, but my favorite NFTs are, yes, the rocks and dick butts.
And my first, I mean, like everyone, you know, when you go through, for example, NFT is a good one. In the beginning, you're like, what the fuck is that, right?
Yeah.
And then you need to hurt your brain. Maybe if you're a bit more weird like you need to less hurt your brain, but you probably need to hurt your brain in the beginning to understand what the hell this is, right?
Yeah.
And so,
my brain hurts often.
so basically, I was just looking at what you were doing and talking about these EtherRocks. I mean, then they went crazy, right? And then the Dick Butt, and I was like, first I was like, what the fuck? And second, I was like, she's smart. So instead of saying what the fuck, I should ask why. What does she understand that I don't?
I think, and I get this question a lot. And people are still really mad about EtherRocks and crypto dick butts. They make people viscerally angry.
I think it's awesome, but
I think it's hilarious. What I thought was really interesting, so I learned about EtherRocks. I don't even recall how, but I learned about EtherRocks randomly. And I remember texting a good friend of mine being like, should I buy a used Honda Civic or an EtherRock?
just explain for those who don't know what an EtherRock is.
Okay, so an EtherRock is an NFT, like this beautiful pudgy penguin. But an EtherRock is one of the very, very early NFTs. I believe the project was created in 2017. Like CryptoPunks, EtherRocks have their own marketplace. So you manage your EtherRock through the Rock Manager console, which is a very funny UX. It's like very clunky. There's 100 EtherRocks. The NFT itself, the artwork, it is a free clip art of a rock. So it's a PNG file that is like when you Google rock PNG, it's just a clip art. It's free. Yeah. It's free on some website. And the dev basically took it, and each EtherRock, and there's been extensive analysis of EtherRocks, each one is a slightly different shade. There's gray rocks, blue rocks, red rocks, brown rocks. The grays are the most common. The blues are a bit more rare. The reds are very rare. Each rock has a number. So some people like to buy specific rock numbers. A friend of mine, after I bought my EtherRock and then rock pilled him, bought rock 21. Another friend bought rock number 8 and 88 because 8s are good luck in certain cultures. So it's quite fun. There's some people who own multiple rocks. I know a triple rocker, somebody who owns 3 rocks, which is like quite an accomplishment. But I bought my EtherRock and I was like, that was my first NFT, was the EtherRock.
First NFT?
That I had actually gone out and bought, right? I didn't like airdrop some, whatever, but I was like, I'm going to go in on EtherRocks and figure out what's going on.
So the first NFT you bought was for $35K and it was a JPEG.
Of a rock.
Of a rock, yeah. Okay.
And then
No, but like, it's so interesting.
But then I saw this group of people. I was like, okay, I'm going to get other people I know who I think are really interesting and have a unique view on markets. I'm going to get them to buy EtherRocks. It's like, I went in, Arthur Hayes from BitMEX, a good friend of mine. I was like, hey, Arthur, you should get an EtherRock. I talked to Kane Warwick from Synthetic. I was like, you really need an EtherRock. I was just like, EtherRock should be status symbol. There are 10,000 punks, and punks are status symbol. I just don't vibe with punks. Personal sort of aesthetic thing. To me, the rock is much funnier because it's so absurd, right?
And there's only 100 of them.
Yes, and it's like crypto Dadaism, basically, right? It's like it's like performance art, really. And I think it takes that absurdity of crypto to a very much an extreme. It's so absurd and so ridiculous. And the best part about it was we got together a group of people who owned rocks. We called it Stonehenge. Very exclusive group. A lot of great people in it. We threw an insane party. The best story about the EtherRock party, we flew in Jamie Jones and Lee Burridge and had them do a back-to-back in a 700-person club with only 150 people in it. And there were people outside during NFT NYC, like with their punks on their phone. They're like, do you know who I am? Like, I own 10 punks. And we were like, bitch, this is an EtherRock party. So someone at the door actually spent $2 million on an EtherRock to get into the party.
Wow.
Which is just so funny to
Crazy.
me. But I think it goes back to this idea. People want to be a part of something exclusive. The rocks themselves are so absurd. There have been so many derivatives of EtherRocks. And then the media headlines, like financial media was outraged. And to them, EtherRocks somehow represented the excesses of crypto. I just thought it was very funny performance art. And I think the committing to the bit is very important. Everyone's like, oh, you should be more professional. And I'm like, I'm a clown. I work in crypto. Like, I don't think you understand. This is what we do. And at its core, what's
No, but I mean, first, it's amazing for advertisement, right? Because people get so pissed off and everybody talks about it.
They get so angry.
And second, you talk about excess, right? And if I remember well, I don't remember the exact sentence I saw before on your Telegram is the path to success comes with many excess, something like that. No?
Oh, this is
It's filled with excess.
Yes, this is a William Blake quote, which like we're all over the map in cultural reference. This is really wild. William Blake, 1800 poet, he said, the path to wisdom is paved with excess.
To wisdom.
And then the second part of the quote is because you never know what is enough until you've had too much. And I actually think EtherRocks in many ways are emblematic of just crypto culture. And EtherRocks happen to be, and Dick Butts, by the way, they're silly and they're funny. Just because, you know, something is a intellectual sort of like, oh, we have a white paper and that's why this token, blah, blah, blah. Like people will go on these 30 thread sort of tweet storms that's effectively like advertising for something like an EtherRock, but just because it has a white paper and some very light like sprinkling of pseudo-intellectualism on top of it, they'll be like, yes, this is a $2 billion protocol. I'm like, there's very little difference between an EtherRock and this. And so I do think it's very important to sort of take a step back and again, be real. I think meme coins are also kind of a similar expression. They're absurd and preposterous, but what's the difference between, you know, some protocols that have very little TVL, very low trading volume, effectively fully subsidized network infrastructure, right? Like all of the nodes are fully subsidized. There's no fee paying demand for block space. There's no activity, and these things have multi-billion-dollar valuations. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the difference might just be meme coin have more attention. At least some of them have much more attention than
at
the
least
protocol.
they're funny. That's
Yeah.
my thing with EtherRocks. Like, at least they're funny and they're fun, and I don't know, it's entertainment value. And I think again, the thing I think sometimes with crypto that's frustrating is people try to be so serious. And I'm like, that all of this is a little bit funny.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about where Bitcoin started, like we were buying drugs on the internet, people.
True.
There's a great meme. There's a great meme that's everyone's seen this meme, I feel like. It's the guy setting up the dominoes and each one gets successively bigger. And there's one where the first domino is buying drugs on the internet, and the last domino is toppling the global financial system. And
that's true.
Yeah. But what do you think? This is always a fun question. You meet an alien and you have to explain memes to them. What meme do you show them? What internet meme do you show them?
I mean, my favorite one is I don't know his name, but it's the guy with the cup, the old guy that is being reused. For example, in crypto, applied to crypto, but it could be applied to anything else, right? Yeah. I'm 24 years old and I'm a crypto trader, and then you see the guy with this cup and he's just old and I don't remember his name. Actually, I had Ray Chan on the podcast.
I love
the
Ray.
Guy, yeah,
Ray is amazing.
And he said
he owns Crypto Dick Butts, by the way. Ray is a whole vibe.
Yeah, he's great. And he said he talks about this dude actually that he met.
Wait, I want to see the name. I actually don't know this one.
Of course, the guy who is like.
Show me.
I don't know if I can. Maybe I'll show you later because I don't know if I can find it easily. But he's just the guy with the cup,
And this is the meme you're using to explain memes to aliens. Okay,
For-
meme. What would I search? Meme guy with cup old.
Old, yeah.
Okay.
I would be doing. You know that.
Oh,
It's like,
this one.
yeah,
Okay,
it's the, I just don't. Yeah, for me, like that's the
Yeah.
ultimate meme
Wait, hold on.
because you can use it for.
How do I show that? Wait, can you put it in front of I feel like we need to share this with everyone. This guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this guy. For me, this guy is being used and reused for so many things, right? It's like one of the best memes.
Yeah. I also like the House on Fire one, the like dog cartoon, sipping a cup of coffee at a table while the house is on
course.
fire, and they're like, this is fun.
Of course, yeah.
But I do think for me, the domino meme where it's, the first domino is buying drugs on the internet, the last domino is like toppling the global financial system. I think it sort of goes back to in crypto, there can be profoundly unserious things that are actually quite serious and quite monumental. So yeah, I think it's good to have a healthy sense of humor. At least it makes the journey more fun.
And it probably also, this meme that you say is probably like a really amazing way to show that we think that, you're born, for example, I was born in Switzerland. You think that everything works. Government work, you pay taxes, everything is working, right? But actually, things work way less than what we think, right? And so therefore, you should take yourself much less seriously and just realize that, hey, like everything is, the word is too complex for one person to understand it, right?
I
And
think
therefore,
the most profound moment is when you meet someone who you really look up to and you realize they have no idea what's going on. Like they're just as clueless and figuring it out in the same way that you are.
I mean, one of the examples for that is the teachers. When you grow up at school and then you grow up with Google, right? Later on in your life, you start to Google everything and you realize, oh, had I had Google, I mean, today being a teacher must be much harder in a classroom because kids have internet, right? And they could just ask anything.
Right.
Whereas you would just take the teachers or even your own parents as an authority and they would very easily say things sometimes that they have no clue about just to look like they know something, right?
I didn't grow up like this because my father is a scientist and I grew up when I was a child. I really wanted an encyclopedia set. This is pre-internet. I only used my computer to play Doom. If you remember the Doom on the floppy disk, that's like where we're at with home computers. I was playing Doom on a floppy disk, but I had an Encyclopedia Britannica set. And I got in trouble a lot because I would stay up at night under the covers with the flashlight reading Encyclopedia Britannica. This is why I say I'm like a bit of a strange bird in this way because I wanted to know things. So I grew up in a very annoying household where we spent a lot of time learning things and knowing things. Yeah. I was imbued with distrust of authority from a young age. It's like, but is that actually true?
So you're building a new firm, right? Investing firm called Crucible Capital.
Mm-hmm. It's my third time on the roller coaster. This time I'm doing it my way. So let's see how that works out.
Are you doing that alone?
I'm a solo GP, yes. So obviously DCG was an incredible journey from 2015 to 2018. For all of his faults, I do think Barry Silbert is extremely smart. And he was very convinced about Bitcoin very early on and turned many people into converts. Great experience, really fascinating. CoinShares for 5.5 years, worked with some of the smartest people who likewise, a lot of conviction in Bitcoin, staked a lot of their own capital, their own reputations on Bitcoin. And this time around, it's like, okay,
Now's the time.
let's try, let's do this. And I had, it's so interesting in 2021, a lot of people approached me and they were like, when are you going to spin out and do your own firm? And people have always been, and I never really quite felt like I knew what the thing was going to be. And I've been talking about this energy compute crypto sort of concept for some time, but I didn't really see the picture clearly, maybe until December of last year. And then the picture started becoming clearer. And then I still didn't really know how I wanted to express what I was seeing. right? Because there are a lot of different ways to sort of express your beliefs, your conviction around what the world will look like a decade from now. And then I feel very lucky that I've had the opportunity over the last 9 years in crypto to work with some really phenomenal people, really smart, really just intelligent, ambitious, risk-loving people. And a few of those people that I had worked with, interacted with, reached out to me. And they're like, I know you're going to start a firm. You might not know it yet, but I know you're going to. And I want to back you. And so starting that way, and in particular, I have to give a huge shout out to the Laser Digital team at Nomura. They were really encouraging, and I didn't even have a name or a thesis, or really, I didn't even have anything written down on paper. And they were like, yes, we want to. And I think that was a huge, I think that's really helpful, especially when you're doing something new. Like, it's always scary. Doing anything is new is scary. And people seem to think like VC is this easy job. It's really scary and really hard, actually. I like it, but it also scares the crap out of me. And then I had another really close friend I known for a number of years who had been in crypto a long time, had been really successful, and he was like, it's go time. Like, let's do this. I'm with you. So I think that's really how it started. And then I was like, okay, it's go time. Go time started in like late March, early April, yeah. So
you tweeted recently, building anything is incredibly hard. The sheer amount of inertia required to give life to something, anything is massive. Cheers to the builders and the doers. It's fucking hard. Keep going.
It's really hard, especially in crypto. Yeah.
What's something since you started that you did not expect would be as hard?
I think anytime you are raising money, whether it's for a company, a project, a fund, whatever it may be, anytime you have to go out and ask people to bet on you. And then not only to bet on you, right? People, I think in our industry and just in venture in general, people celebrate the fundraise. And like, the fundraise is actually the start of
absolutely
the hard part, right? You get to that point, like, raising capital is hard, getting people bought in is hard, getting them over the finish line, getting everyone to wire their money. And then all of a sudden you're sitting on this pile of money and there are these expectations, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, like now I have to go and do this thing. And as you go through that process, I think just and especially for me as a solo GP, like, I'm lucky in that I do feel very fortunate in that I have a lot of friends who are GPs, solo GPs. I have people who've built businesses. I have so many founders I've worked with over the years who I still talk to all the time. I'm close with and friendly with the founders I'm talking to now and backing now, right? We're going through similar journeys, but in different ways. Just every moment when you feel really tired, when your brain hurts, when you just like, you're like, God, this is so much. And then there's more and it just keeps coming. And you have to take a moment and just be like, so I've become a really quite like boring person. I go to bed early. I got an Oura ring because I'm not sleeping well. So I'm like trying to get better at sleeping.
Do that.
It's not going well. It's really, this morning, all of the bars on like the little app were all red. It's basically like you suck at sleeping.
Now I know where you were late.
Got at it. I went to the gym, so I woke up early this morning.
I think that's a great. But
you really have to manage your psychology. I think as I've gotten older, like understanding, respecting my physical health, and just also understanding that investing is creative, right? Like particularly investing in nascent industries is a creative endeavor. So finding ways to refill and recharge my battery by doing things that are completely unrelated.
Without feeling like an imposter. Like, hey, I'm not working right now, but I'm doing something that's actually beneficial for my decision making.
Do you want to hear something crazy?
I want. I think everybody wants.
My calendar is empty.
Empty.
I don't like having a lot of things on my calendar. Like last week I had 3 days where my calendar was like that nightmare calendar, you know, where like every half hour is fully booked.
Anxiety.
Those days give me anxiety.
Hell.
I really find I like to have an open calendar. And that doesn't mean I'm not constantly talking to people or on the phone. But now so much communication also happens outside of calls. I talk to a lot of people on Telegram. I'm like in Twitter DMs with people. I had a conversation with someone the other day on like Instagram DMs. It's just the conversation's happening so many different places. Yesterday I went out for like a quick walk and I rang someone up. I was like, hey, do you want to just do a quick FaceTime and talk through this thing? I was talking to a founder about valuation. We don't have a call schedule, but I just like being free and available because I think it gives you more room for creativity and sort of that serendipity that I think is really so important in early stage investing.
Absolutely.
I think having busyness is kind of this curse. And I find when I'm overscheduled, I get very depleted. There's so many people reaching out to me. They're like, hey, we should meet up. And I'm like, for what? Like, what? For what? I so appreciate you thinking of me. Respectfully, like, I would much prefer to use that time to not have a meeting with you because I already know you. And I'm not going to
Makes sense. Yeah.
I'm not going to be a client. I'm not investing. Like, I'm happy to have a Zoom or a phone. Like, here's my cell phone. I just give people my phone number. Like, call me. We can just have a chat and catch up. But I don't think it's like, or like people who live in I'm like, we both live in New York. We're both in New York regular. Like, we could just meet here. I would prefer to use my timing to meet people I haven't met before, see people I haven't seen in some time, but also meet new people, right? And then I feel like outside of the conference, then we can have a focused conversation probably the week after. I'll have a week of just like lots of follow-ups and next steps. But I just find it so funny. People are obsessed with like meeting. And I'm like, I don't need to fly to Brussels to meet with you. We could just meet at the coffee shop down the street from where we both live. I also don't know how much time I really want to spend with you. Like, I have a family, I have friends, like I have other things I would like to spend time on, and that's not a criticism, but I do think an important part of building something is giving yourself space to be expansive. I think one of the things I noticed in 2021 when my whole life was crypto, like I was on the circuit, I was going to all the conferences, going to all the events, all the parties. I was so stupid. I made bad decisions. I made bad investing decisions. My state of mind was bad because I wasn't sleeping. My health was bad. Yeah. I just made a lot of, in hindsight, dumb decisions because I didn't have the space and time to think rationally. And I was in this sort of space where I had blinders on because everyone around me was saying the same things, doing the same things. And it's very easy to get caught up in that.
Absolutely.
So again, it's important to sort of take a step away. I actually really like having dinner with non-crypto people. Like I have some friends who work in commodities or FX trading, clean tech. They're adjacent to what I'm focused on, but I find it really constructive to get their view of the world, to understand what they're excited about, to run ideas by them, get their input, to see if I can explain things happening in my world to them. And if they're like, I don't know what you just said, I'm like, I need to do some work here. I do think that's important because if we want crypto to be this phenomenon that we all believe it's going to be, then at some point we have to actually start spending time with people outside of crypto.
Absolutely. Oh, I couldn't agree more.
I'm actually going to
agree more.
I had a funny conversation with someone. I was like, I got my Boomer Po app this morning. I went on LinkedIn. It's like Boomer status. Like, I like using LinkedIn. I go to non-crypto conferences now, and it's really refreshing.
I think the exact same. And one of the things I did for this,
fun.
One of the things I did for this interview was, this conversation was, I went on your LinkedIn profile, and I saw that your bio, I like energy, compute, and crypto, is actually more up to date than the Twitter one. And I was like, I think LinkedIn is great. Like the algo, I think is great. Like the whole thing is, so everybody in crypto says LinkedIn is shit, whatever. I don't think it's...
Okay, I'm going to give you alpha. LinkedIn is a cesspool. Like the content on LinkedIn is so bad because it's content oriented towards people who like read a guide on marketing and they're like, oh, I'm going to do content. It's bad. It's all really bad. So if you have anything even remotely cogent to say about something going on in crypto, and I like making slides, which is also boomer activity, but I think I like visual things and just frameworks that I can look at that help me understand things. So I like just rip a quick slide and I put it on LinkedIn with some explanation and very high ROI activity.
absolutely. For me, I just post these daily clips on every platform, right? From this podcast everywhere. It's like a content machine. On LinkedIn, I had some guys.
You are a content machine.
I mean, I'm trying to build a content machine because you have to, right? If you do podcasting, that's how people consume, like short clips, etc. On LinkedIn, I had multiple people contacting me for even to interview the co-founder of YouTube from LinkedIn, right? A guy who built the NFT project that got the co-founder of YouTube into Web3, and like a few other big people. And I'm like, I'm getting noticed there because no one in crypto gives a fuck about LinkedIn, right? But all
the ones who do our marketing, you know, like something insane. I honestly just think, again, is like water rises to meet its level, right? So I think a lot of times people are very skeptical and dismissive of non-crypto things. But it's actually amazing if you just give people an opportunity and you kind of meet them where they're at and you show them what it is that's going on. That's why I like giving talks. My talks tend to be like very slide framework research oriented because I think it's really constructive. And what I always appreciate is people will reach out to me afterwards and they'll be like, thank you, because that something clicked for me. And I feel like we don't spend enough time trying to figure out if what we're saying, what we're doing, what we're showing people is clicking, because I don't think it really clicks sometimes. And you have to try a lot of different permutations, right? I feel like I've been giving the same talk for the last 5 years. It's all permutations of the same conversation. And then if I figure out, okay, this thing sticks, these things are not really working, okay, I'm going to go back and reconfigure. And I have a lot of people who are very direct with me, which is helpful. The big thing, actually, be very candid, that I'm now trying to figure out, I feel like there is no good playbook for content in crypto right now. Everyone has a podcast, no offense. But like, there are a lot of podcasts. Every venture firm has a podcast. I'm just like, God, the world does not need another VC podcast. Newsletters, like, that's a lot of pressure. And also there's so many of them. I don't know that people even really open them. So I'm trying to figure out what is a good way to get ideas out there. That's like, the clips are nice because it's very low effort required on the part of the viewer. It's a minute of commitment.
Is 30 seconds.
30 seconds of
I mean,
commitment.
depends which platform, but I absolutely. And that's how you get people consume the podcast first through the YouTube game is a different game, right? Thumbnail and title, and then you can reach audiences, right?
About that. I'm
but all
stupid at YouTube.
But all the rest is just these clips that you just pump every day that almost you give no choice.
Right.
It's like the person who drives and see McDonald's. At some point, they're going to start looking, right?
I do love McDonald's.
And because you've been there all the time, right?
It's consistent.
It is.
When you're driving, you don't know what you're going to get. If you stop somewhere, like sometimes you have a really good experience, sometimes you have a really bad experience. McDonald's, it's never good. It's never bad. It just is.
The Big Mac is very good.
What's your order at McDonald's? So you're a Big Mac?
Big Mac. I'm a Big Mac kind of guy, yeah.
Oh, and I'm a 2 cheeseburger meal, or sometimes that's too much, and then it's a quarter pounder with extra pickles.
Yeah, but they're still all closed. For me, the people I don't understand are the ones who pick up like the freaking fish or fillet or like something that's kind of like
rib, yeah.
Like, or the wrap or the salad. I'm like, why would you go to McDonald's?
They don't
for
like
that?
wraps and salads anymore. Menu's been consolidated because labor is so expensive, right? Supply chain's so expensive. So McDonald's menu has gotten much smaller. They don't even pretend to be healthy anymore. They're like, you are eating a hamburger. You're eating a hamburger.
That's good.
They're like, you have 5 choices. You get fried chicken. And it's not even chicken. It's like fried slop. You get a burger. That's it.
I mean, actually, as a consumer, that's what you want when you arrive somewhere. You're like, I don't want to have to go through an entire menu.
I didn't grow up in America. You didn't grow up in America. No. I grew up in Nederland, in the Netherlands. You grew up in Switzerland. Okay. In the Netherlands, when you go to a restaurant, okay, the menu is like this. It's 1 page, and there's like 3 appetizers. There's 2 or 3 entrees. There's like a chicken, a meat, and a fish choice. And then there's like 2 desserts. And that's the menu. And you look at it and you're like, okay, boom, boom, easy. Okay. In America, my first dining experience in America, I was 9 years old. And my dad, we were in Chicago. We took a family trip because my dad was trying to like slow roll the idea of relocating to the States. Okay. So we're in Chicago and my dad takes us to a cheesecake factory. Okay, the Cheesecake Factory, they bring you a binder. The menu is a binder. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, this is terrifying. It's too many choices. The paradox of choice. But it's all slop. It's all like frozen Cisco food that's reheated,
Yeah.
in the back.
It's so funny that you say that because in 2006 was my first time in the US with my family and I discovered Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah, what did you
And
think?
I thought it was amazing.
Really?
Because I was like, I love cheesecake. All these burgers, they were so huge. First time, right?
Everything's so
I'm
huge.
like, I want to bring Cheesecake Factory to Europe, right? And then I checked online. First I was probably 2006, 14 years old, so they would be like, fuck off. But second, there was already someone doing it, right? So I was like, and the other thing I discovered in the US was Abercrombie and Fitch 2006, and I was like, I want to bring Abercrombie and Fitch to Europe.
Abercrombie and Fitch was cool because everyone
so
was
cool.
so hot.
It was
And
so cool.
everyone was hot. The store was really dark. You could not see what you were buying. The store was so dark. It was actually, the 2000s were an incredible time in human history. The 90s, amazing. I moved to America in the 90s. Amazing. Unparalleled era to be a child in America, 1990s. 2000s, just wild. Absolutely wild. Now everything's very sanitized. Everything's very like prepackaged, sanitized. And then the algorithm, right, has made everything this, I don't know. What I really dislike, and this is again why I don't have stuff on my calendar. I'm not really into like trendy things because I feel like the algorithm, I used to just travel, right? And I'd go somewhere I'd never been before and I'd just wander. Like I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a map. I didn't have a list of stuff. You'd just go wander and like figure stuff out and then you'd write it down. And then your friend would be like, oh, I'm going to go here. And you're like, oh, when I went, you go here and you walk down this alleyway and there's this great little shop and they just sell gloves. I don't know, something random. And it was great. Or there's this little cafe here and they have this really lovely owner and you should ask him about blah, blah. But it was an experience, an adventure. Now, because of Instagram, everyone has all these expectations and everyone wants to get the photo to put it on their social that they've been there. And everything has just become so the same and commodified. And I find it very tiring.
Yeah.
It's very tiring.
I couldn't agree more with that.
Anyways, neither here nor there. Cheesecake Factory, overwhelming. You loved it. I was horrified. And then the food came out. I remember I was so overwhelmed by the menu. I don't know what anything is. Like in the Netherlands, the food is appalling, right? Like no offense to the Dutch, but the Dutch kitchen's not known for its deliciousness. It's quite practical. It's like fish. Here's some fish, asparagus. But I was like, what do I order? And I was like, I asked the waiter and he was like, oh, the meatloaf's our top seller. I'm going to get meatloaf. I don't know what meatloaf is. The meatloaf arrives. It's literally the size of a book.
Yeah, that's true. That's why I found it awesome because I was a guy who was always hungry as fuck. So I was like, it's so much. Even the burgers are like this is burger paradise, right?
Comical how big it is. I haven't been back to the Cheesecake Factory in a while, but it's an experience.
I don't want to, but we have to wrap up.
Okay.
Wait,
when's the last time on your show that you talked about the Cheesecake Factory?
Never. But we often talk about a lot of things that are non-crypto related.
Yeah.
That's one of the goals, actually. I had so many other questions on so many things, but
wait, let's do
time.
quick one answers. We can do 3 quick one-word answers or one sentence. Go. What do you have?
Do you have kids?
No comment. Do you have kids? I feel like asking a crypto person that nobody should answer that question. Your personal life is your personal life. Be safe. Good OPSEC.
I actually had to ask Raoul Pal this question. And he said no, and then he explained why.
Oh.
So that's why I never ask specific question about specific people. It's more like to understand why, if yes, or if no, how did it change your life, etc. I asked Annabelle Huang from Amber, as a woman who is very successful. I asked her, but you're going to say no comment?
No comment. I have no comment. I always have no comment about my family or my personal life. That's for me and not for anyone else.
You told me the other day, I think, if I understood well, that you got your house off the grid.
I'm working on taking my house off the grid. Yeah. So I buried a 3,500 gallon propane tank in my yard. I have a generator. I'm running off of well water. So I have a well and I have 2 ponds, a 1 acre pond and a slightly smaller pond that can store water. I have like a year's supply of beans and other legumes. And then I'm now working on a solar and battery installation that are going to be on the solar installation will be on the Glow network. And then the battery installation will be on Daylight network, which are 2 decentralized energy generation protocols. So I'm taking my house off the grid. I recently just picked up a really beautiful Beretta 1301 Tactical. I've been dreaming of that for a while. I got it in a custom bronze finish. Like, I'm very into personal resilience. I think it's very important.
Why?
Why?
Yeah, why is self-sovereignty so important?
Because that's what we keep talking about in crypto. And I think it's important if you talk about it, if you invest in it, you have to actually do those things. Like, how am I as an investor going to sit here and tell the world, oh yeah, like, you know, Daylight is an amazing protocol. It's so easy to use. But if I don't do any of those things myself.
Yeah. Walk the talk.
Yeah, you must. I've always done that. I have lost countless Bitcoin doing that. But I think it doesn't make sense to me. I talk to investors who like have never even used MetaMask. And I'm like,
doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Listen, to each their own. For me personally, like, very important. I also think if we talk about self-sovereignty, it's the reason I have my house in New Hampshire. Like, it's the reason I spend a lot of time there. We talk about self-sovereignty. Why don't you actually try some self-sovereignty? It's fucking hard. It takes planning. It takes effort. It takes a lot of maintenance. It's important to know how to do these things. And all these crypto bros, like, they, no offense, not to stereotype, but I talk to these people who are like, oh yeah, like Bitcoin's all about self-sovereignty. And I'm like, what have you done in your life other than gone a computer and push some buttons to express your self-sovereignty? What actions, what steps have you taken? And I think you can tell a lot about someone's character and the fiber of their being. Like, LARPing is one thing. Go and be about it and then come back to me and tell me what that's like. It's very important to me, I think, to actually adhere to the principles that you're preaching. And it becomes very apparent when people say one thing but then live their life a completely different way.
The last one for today. What's your biggest prediction for the next 12 months?
Biggest prediction? Up only.
Why?
No, you said short.
Done.
Up only.
Beautiful. Up only. Thank you so much for doing that. That was awesome.